We want to salute and celebrate every brave soldier who stood his or her ground to ensure we are safe. We love and celebrate you. Your service will be rewarded. Now, the shocking thing about today's experience is the fact that it did not follow the regular pattern of similar people's experiences where they died, met Jesus, and then got to see what message Jesus had for them. No, today's experience is entirely different. We understand and know that Jesus followed this path because of the specialty of the message. And please, beloved, if you intend to have time with your families and friends, and even go as far as having dishes together, please listen to this, because this will save you, your grandkids, your children, your family, and your friends. We got a lot of responses from people on the last post we made, considering making their ways right with Jesus because of the encouragement they received. From the seniors in our midst, one person said, "If at this stage of life seniors could still be seeking God, I will really take my relationship seriously." It's because of such impact that we will encourage you today, once again, to tell us where you are watching from, your age, and also, please beloved, leave a word of encouragement according to how the Holy Spirit lays it in your heart to strengthen someone today. I will begin sharing today's experience. How many of you remember the U.S. military assignment that was captured on news footage about 3 weeks ago? The one where Special Operations Forces were deployed to neutralize a terrorist cell operating near the Syrian border? That was us. That was my team. My name is Marcus Chen, and for the past 12 years, I've served as a Navy SEAL. I've seen things that would break most men. I've been in firefights that lasted hours, watched brothers fall beside me, and carried out missions in places the world will never know about. We were sent in under cover of darkness to take out a high-value target who had been coordinating attacks against Allied forces. The intelligence was solid, or so we thought. What we walked into was an ambush, a carefully orchestrated trap that had been waiting for us. The firefight erupted before we even reached the compound. Bullets tore through the night air like angry hornets, tracers lighting up the darkness in streaks of deadly light. I've been trained to handle chaos. I've been trained to push through fear and operate when every instinct screams at you to run. But that night, in the dusty streets of that nameless village, I learned that training can only take you so far. I took a round to my left side, just below my ribs. The impact spun me around and dropped me to one knee. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, like someone had shoved a red-hot poker into my gut. I could hear my commander's voice cutting through the radio chatter, sharp and urgent. "Chen is hit. Chen is down. Somebody get him cover, now." My teammates responded instantly, laying down suppressive fire that gave me precious seconds to move. But moving was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Every breath felt like knives stabbing into my chest. Every movement sent waves of agony through my body. I dragged myself behind a crumbling wall, leaving a dark trail in the sand behind me. My hands were shaking as I pressed against the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. The world was starting to tilt and spin. Sounds became muffled, like I was underwater. I could hear the steady crack of rifle fire, the shouts of my teammates, the whine of bullets passing close by. But it all seemed distant, like it was happening to someone else. That's when something impossible occurred. Something that, even now, I struggle to put into words. I saw myself, not in a mirror or a reflection, but actually saw myself from outside my own body. I watched as Marcus Chen, Navy SEAL, pressed his hand against his bleeding side and struggled to find better cover. I watched as my teammates formed a protective barrier around my position, firing methodically at muzzle flashes in the darkness. What it means is that I am alive, but yet I am seeing myself in the other realm. Honestly, I don't know how, but then that's my experience. And then everything stopped. The gunfire ceased. The shouting faded. The chaos and violence that had surrounded me just seconds before simply vanished, replaced by a silence so complete it was almost tangible. I stood there, no longer feeling the pain from my wound, no longer hearing the battle, just existing in this strange, peaceful quiet. I looked down and noticed a bottle lying on the ground in front of me. It was clear glass, with something colorful inside. As I bent to pick it up, I realized there were hundreds, maybe thousands of these bottles scattered across the ground as far as I could see. Each one contained what appeared to be a small flag. The bottle I'd picked up contained the American flag. The stars and stripes were folded neatly inside the glass, somehow existing in that impossible space. I stood there holding it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, when I noticed the other bottles more clearly. Each one bore the flag of a different nation. Without thinking, I bent down and picked up 3 more: Canada, South Africa, and the Philippines. My hands moved on their own as I unscrewed the cap of the bottle containing the American flag. As I pulled the flag out, it began to unfold and wave gently despite there being no wind. I stared at it. My vision opened. That's the only way I can describe it. One moment I was looking at a flag, and the next I was seeing into something beyond normal sight. Images flooded my mind, scenes playing out before me like I was watching multiple movies at once, all of them crystal clear and vivid. I saw families across America making preparations for Christmas. The scenes were everywhere, in every state, in cities and small towns alike. I watched as people decorated trees, wrapped presents, and planned gatherings with loved ones. The excitement was palpable. Children's faces lit up with anticipation. Adults smiled as they made lists and checked them twice. There was joy in the air, the kind of pure happiness that the Christmas season brings. I saw people traveling to visit relatives, cars packed with luggage and gifts. I watched as families reunited at airports and train stations, embracing after months apart. The warmth of those moments filled me with a sense of nostalgia for my own family gatherings. Christmas had always been special in my household growing up, and seeing these scenes reminded me of simpler times before I'd chosen this life of service and danger. The vision shifted, and I found myself observing Christmas dinners. Mostly these took place in grandparents' homes, where multiple generations gathered around large tables laden with food. The laughter, the conversation, the clinking of glasses raised in toasts, it was beautiful. It was everything the holiday should be. But then I began to notice something that sent a chill through me despite the warmth of the scenes. On nearly every table, prominently placed among the dishes, were containers of butter. Nothing unusual about that, I thought at first. Butter is a staple of holiday cooking. But as I looked closer, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Each container, every single one, bore a mark. It was subtle, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. But it was there. A small symbol that resembled a cancellation mark, like something had been crossed out or marked as invalid. The terrifying part was that no one seemed to notice it. The families happily passed the butter around, spreading it on rolls, mixing it into mashed potatoes, using it to baste turkey. Their faces remained joyful, completely unaware of what they were consuming. I watched children reach for bread slathered in the marked butter. I saw elderly grandparents, already frail, adding generous portions to their meals. No one knew. No one could see what I was seeing. That's when I felt a presence beside me. I turned, and words cannot adequately describe what I saw. There was a figure standing next to me, radiating a light that didn't hurt to look at, but instead filled me with an overwhelming sense of peace and love. I knew immediately who this was. In my entire life, I had never considered myself a particularly religious man. I believed in God in that distant, cultural way many people do, but I'd never had a personal encounter or relationship. War had made me question whether God existed at all, or if he did, why he allowed such suffering. But in that moment, I knew beyond any shadow of doubt that I was in the presence of Jesus Christ. He didn't speak with audible words, but I understood everything he communicated to me as clearly as if he had. He showed me that Christmas, a celebration meant to honor his birth, had become corrupted by an evil that most people were completely unaware of. He revealed that the vision I was seeing wasn't symbolic or metaphorical, it was a genuine warning about something that would happen in the coming December. Jesus made it clear to me that believers needed to be extremely careful about their butter intake during this season. He revealed that the enemy, the devil himself, intended to use contaminated butter as a tool to destroy the health of many people, seniors, young adults, and even children. The scope of it was horrifying. This wasn't a random contamination or an accident. This was a calculated attack on the health and well-being of millions. He showed me what was happening inside certain butter companies. Though he never mentioned any specific names, I saw production facilities where corners were being cut, where safety protocols were ignored, where profit was prioritized over human health. I witnessed contamination occurring at multiple stages of production. Plastic fragments finding their way into the product from worn machinery. Cloth pieces from workers' gloves ending up in the butter. Packaging chemicals seeping into the food itself. But the contamination wasn't just physical. Jesus revealed to me that many butter companies had engaged in what he called deceptive practices that went beyond simple marketing. I saw how products labeled as pure butter actually contained significant amounts of vegetable oils. Sometimes as much as half the product was oil rather than actual butter. Water was added to increase volume. Artificial coloring was used to make the mixture look like real butter. Consumers were paying premium prices for what was essentially margarine masquerading as butter. He showed me the marketing strategies these companies employed, and they were shockingly manipulative. I saw how they used patriotic imagery, flags, countryside farms, wholesome families to create an illusion of purity and tradition. I watched as they positioned their products as heart-healthy or natural, while simultaneously filling them with heavily processed ingredients. I observed them using premium packaging, foil wrapping, and luxury branding to justify higher prices for inferior products. The deception ran deeper. Jesus revealed how these companies practiced what's called shrinkflation, reducing package sizes while keeping prices the same or even raising them. He showed me how they constantly changed recipes without clear communication to consumers, which posed serious risks to people with allergies. Someone allergic to certain oils might buy a product they'd safely used for years, not knowing the formula had changed, and suffer a severe reaction. I saw so many recalls for foreign objects found in butter, plastic, metal fragments, pieces of packaging material. While no deaths had been reported, Jesus showed me elderly people choking on these contaminants, children ingesting microplastics, families unknowingly consuming packaging chemicals that would accumulate in their bodies over time. The packaging chemicals were particularly concerning. Jesus revealed to me something called PFAS, forever chemicals, that don't break down in the environment or in human bodies. These chemicals were leaching from butter wrappers into the butter itself. He showed me how these substances accumulate over years, affecting hormones, immune systems, and potentially causing serious illnesses down the line. But the most disturbing thing Jesus revealed was the effect this contaminated butter would have during the Christmas season specifically. He showed me timelines, cause and effect chains that played out like dominoes falling. I saw families gathering for Christmas dinner, happy and unsuspecting. I watched as they consumed the contaminated butter in large quantities, as people do during holiday feasts. Then I saw the aftermath in the weeks and months that followed. I witnessed elderly grandparents becoming mysteriously ill in January, their immune systems compromised by the chemicals and contaminants they'd ingested. I saw children developing strange allergies and sensitivities that doctors couldn't explain. I watched as middle-aged adults found themselves fatigued and unwell, unable to pinpoint why they felt so poorly. The contamination would be traced back eventually, but not before significant damage had been done. Jesus revealed to me that the butter issue was just one part of a larger assault on human health, but it was a significant one because of how ubiquitous butter is during the holiday season. He showed me that believers especially needed to be vigilant, to read labels carefully, to question what they were purchasing and consuming. He revealed that prayer over food wasn't just a ritual but a genuine spiritual protection that many had forgotten to practice seriously. He impressed upon me the importance of sharing this warning, even though I knew how crazy it would sound. He showed me that some would listen and take precautions, and those families would be spared the worst of what was coming. Others would dismiss it as conspiracy theory or the ravings of someone who'd suffered trauma, and they would learn the hard way. As this revelation about America concluded, I felt compelled to open the next bottle, the one containing the Canadian flag. My hands moved without conscious thought, unscrewing the cap and pulling out the red and white maple leaf banner. As with the American flag, the moment I held it and looked at it, my vision opened again to show me what was set to happen in that nation. The scene that unfolded before me was completely different from what I'd seen for America. Instead of contamination and physical threats, I saw something spiritual unfolding across Canada. The coming Christmas season would spark an unprecedented awareness of the Christian faith and the person of Jesus Christ throughout the Canadian provinces. I watched as something like a wave of spiritual hunger swept across the nation. From Vancouver to Halifax, from the territories in the north to the border cities in the south, Jesus revealed to me that this would be what many would call a revival. Though that word seemed inadequate for what I was witnessing, I saw people who had never set foot in a church suddenly feeling drawn to explore Christianity. I watched as young adults, who had been raised in secular households, found themselves asking questions about Jesus, about faith, about eternal things. The curiosity wasn't forced or manufactured, it was genuine, organic, spreading person to person like wildfire. I observed as churches that had been struggling with declining attendance suddenly found themselves overwhelmed with visitors. Their services were packed with seekers, with people who had real questions and genuine spiritual hunger. I saw tears streaming down faces as individuals encountered Jesus for the first time. In a personal way, I watched as lives were transformed, as addictions were broken, as broken relationships were healed. The movement was beautiful in its simplicity and power. Jesus showed me that this was his doing, a genuine move of his Spirit across the Canadian nation. It wasn't tied to any particular denomination or celebrity preacher. It wasn't driven by marketing or programs. It was simply Jesus making himself known to people who were ready to receive him. I saw thousands upon thousands of Canadians accepting Jesus as their Lord and Savior during those months following Christmas. The testimonies were powerful people experiencing radical life changes, families being restored, communities being transformed by love and compassion. Churches that had been cold and ritualistic found themselves reignited with passion and purpose. Ministries that had been barely surviving suddenly had more volunteers and resources than they knew what to do with. But then the vision shifted, and what I saw next broke my heart. As the revival continued into January and February of 2026, I began to see churches getting distracted. The initial move of God had been pure and powerful, but human nature began to interfere. I watched as church leaders, overwhelmed by the sudden growth, started focusing more on managing the movement than following the Spirit that had initiated it. I saw committees being formed, strategies being developed, programs being implemented. The spontaneous and organic nature of the revival was being systematized and structured. Buildings were being planned, budgets were being argued over, and politics began creeping into what had been a pure move of God. The churches weren't doing anything overtly wrong, they were just doing what churches often do, trying to organize and manage what God had started. But in doing so, they were losing touch with the very presence that had initiated the revival in the first place. The most tragic part of the vision was what Jesus called worshiping God in flesh. I saw this strange phenomenon spreading through Canadian churches in February 2026. What started as a genuine reverence for God's work began morphing into something else. People started elevating human leaders who had been part of the revival, treating them almost like celebrities or mini messiahs. Certain churches became destinations not because God was moving there, but because a particular pastor or worship leader had become famous. I watched as the focus gradually shifted from Jesus himself to human personalities, human programs, human achievements. Churches began competing with each other, each claiming to be the true center of the revival. Unity fractured into division. What God had started to bring together, human pride was pulling apart. By late February 2026, I saw something that made me weep even in the vision. The revival that could have transformed an entire nation had been quenched, not by persecution or opposition from outside the church, but by the church itself losing focus on Jesus and instead focusing on the flesh, on human effort, human glory, human control. The very churches that God had chosen to be vessels for his work had become obstacles to it. Jesus revealed to me with profound sadness that the movement and revival had been intended to last for a full year. From December 2025 through December 2026, it was meant to bring the entire Canadian nation under the complete governance and influence of Christ. He had planned to do something unprecedented, to show his power and love in a way that would have made Canada a beacon of light to other nations. But the vision showed me that if the churches didn't take heed, if they continued prioritizing organization over the Spirit's leading, they would kill the movement and intention of God. The revival would sputter out by March, leaving many disappointed and disillusioned. The opportunity would be lost, and it might be decades before God offered such a chance again. Jesus impressed upon me the critical importance of Canadian believers staying focused on Him alone. He showed me that the key to sustaining the revival was radical humility among church leaders, a willingness to let God lead even when it didn't fit their plans or programs. He revealed that the moment churches started trying to manage what God was doing, rather than simply following and obeying, they would begin to lose it. The warning for Canada was clear: embrace the revival with open hands, not trying to control or direct it, but simply being vessels for whatever God wanted to do. The temptation to build platforms, establish reputations, and create lasting institutions from the movement would be strong, but it would be deadly to the revival itself. As this vision concerning Canada faded, I found my attention drawn to the third bottle I had picked up, the one containing the flag of South Africa. My heart was already heavy from what I'd seen for America and Canada, and I wasn't sure I was ready to see more. But I knew I had no choice. This was information that needed to be revealed, warnings that needed to be given. I opened the bottle and removed the flag of South Africa, with its distinctive Y shape and multiple colors. The moment I looked at it, expecting another vision to unfold, something unexpected happened. Instead of scenes from South Africa, I saw an image that made no sense to me initially. There was an eagle, massive and imposing, but its feet were made of iron, not natural talons, but cold, hard metal. The eagle's wings were spread wide as if preparing to take flight or descend on prey. Its eyes were fierce and focused, and the iron feet gleamed with an unnatural sheen. I tried to understand what I was seeing, tried to ask questions about what this eagle represented. But before I could form coherent thoughts, the vision began to fragment. The peaceful silence that had surrounded me started breaking apart. I could hear sounds again, distant at first, then growing louder. Beeping machines, voices speaking medical jargon, the antiseptic smell of a hospital. I felt myself being pulled back forcefully, like I was being yanked through a tunnel at incredible speed. The overwhelming sense of peace and presence I had felt began to fade, replaced by growing awareness of physical sensation. Pain returned, sharp and immediate, radiating from my left side where the bullet had entered. My eyes snapped open, and I found myself staring at a white ceiling with fluorescent lights. I was in a hospital room, surrounded by beeping monitors and IV stands. My body felt heavy, exhausted, and there was a deep ache in my side where they'd obviously performed surgery. I could see bandages covering my torso when I looked down. A nurse noticed I was awake and immediately called for a doctor. Within minutes, I was being examined, asked questions about my pain level, whether I could move my extremities, if I knew where I was, and what had happened. I answered mechanically, still processing the incredible experience I just had. The medical team told me I'd been lucky. The bullet had missed major organs by millimeters. I'd lost a significant amount of blood, and there had been moments during surgery when things were touch and go, but I'd pulled through. They said it was a miracle I'd survived, that men with less severe wounds than mine often didn't make it. If they only knew about the real miracle that had occurred. In the days that followed, as I recovered in that military hospital, I struggled with what I'd seen and experienced. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as a hallucination brought on by blood loss and trauma. That would have been the easy, rational explanation. But I couldn't shake the absolute certainty I felt that what I'd experienced was real, more real than anything I'd ever encountered in my entire life. I was a Navy SEAL. I'd been trained to observe, to analyze, to separate fact from fiction in high-stress situations. My survival had often depended on my ability to accurately assess reality. And everything in my training and experience told me that what I'd witnessed in that place, between life and death, had been genuine. But I also knew how it would sound if I tried to share it. I'd be labeled as mentally unstable, suffering from PTSD, or seeking attention. The military might question my fitness for duty. People would call me a conspiracy theorist or a religious fanatic. The rational, skeptical part of my mind understood all the reasons why I should keep this experience to myself. Yet I couldn't shake what Jesus had impressed upon me in that encounter. He had shown me these things for a reason. The information wasn't just for me, it was a warning that needed to be shared. Regardless of how crazy it might sound or what personal cost I might pay for speaking out. If I told this story within the military, it would be classified as confidential information, not meant to be disclosed outside authorized channels. That's what we do with intelligence that could affect national security or operational planning. But how do you classify a spiritual warning? How do you file a report about a divine revelation? I thought about my teammates, the brothers I'd served alongside for years. We'd shared everything together: fear, triumph, loss, and hope. Would they believe me if I told them what I'd seen? Or would they think the bullet had done more damage than the doctors realized? I thought about the families I'd seen in my vision, gathering for Christmas dinners with contaminated butter on their tables. I thought about the Canadian believers who would receive an incredible opportunity for revival, but might squander it through human pride and organizational thinking. I thought about the mysterious eagle with iron feet and wondered what it meant for South Africa and possibly other nations. The weight of this knowledge pressed on me like a physical burden. How was I supposed to warn people about what was coming? Who would listen to a Navy SEAL talking about spiritual visions and divine warnings? I had no platform, no reputation as a spiritual leader, no credentials that would make people take me seriously on matters of faith. But then I remembered something Jesus had communicated to me during the vision. He had said that he often chooses the unlikely messengers, the ones the world would dismiss or overlook, because their very unlikeliness becomes part of the authentication. A Navy SEAL warning about contaminated butter and spiritual revival that was so unusual, so unexpected, that it might just make people pause and listen. As I lay in that hospital bed, recovering from surgery, I made a decision. I would share what I'd seen, regardless of the consequences. I would put it down in writing, preserve every detail I could remember, and release it as a warning to whoever would listen. If people dismissed me as crazy, so be it. If the military questioned my mental state, I would deal with that. If skeptics mocked and critics attacked, I would endure it, because I'd seen what I'd seen. I'd been in the presence of Jesus Christ, and he had shown me these things for a purpose. To the believers reading this account, I want to say this: love God with everything you have. Be faithful to him in all circumstances. Take seriously the warnings he gives, even when they come through unusual messengers or unexpected channels. The Bible is full of stories where God used the most unlikely people to deliver his messages: fishermen, shepherds, children, foreigners, and yes, even soldiers. The warning about the butter is practical and immediate. Please, as Christmas approaches, be careful about what you purchase and consume. Read labels carefully. Research the companies you're buying from. Don't assume that because something looks wholesome or traditional that it actually is. The enemy works through deception, and one of his favorite tactics is to corrupt what should be good and pure. Pray over your food not just as a ritual, but as a genuine act of spiritual protection. Ask God to reveal any contamination or harm, and trust him to guide you. If something doesn't feel right, honor that instinct. The Holy Spirit often warns us through subtle unease or discomfort with certain choices. To the Canadian believers specifically, you are about to receive an incredible gift. A genuine move of God's Spirit is coming your way. But with that gift comes a responsibility to steward it well. Don't try to control it or manage it. Don't build platforms or organizations around it. Don't elevate human leaders or create celebrity Christians. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus alone and follow wherever he leads. Even if it doesn't make sense to your natural thinking, the temptation will be strong to organize, systematize, and program what God is doing spontaneously. Resist that temptation with everything you have. Let God be God. Let him work in unexpected ways through unexpected people. Stay humble, stay dependent, and stay focused on Jesus rather than on the movement itself. I don't know what the eagle with iron feet represents for South Africa. That part of the vision was cut short before I could understand it fully. But I know it was significant, and I know that someone reading this will understand what it means. Perhaps someone from South Africa will recognize the symbolism or know how to interpret it. I'm putting it out there as I saw it, trusting that God will reveal its meaning to those who need to understand. As I write this account, I'm still recovering from my wounds. The doctors say I'll make a full recovery and should be able to return to active duty within a few months. But I'm not sure what my future holds anymore. This experience has changed me in ways I'm still trying to understand. I'm not the same man I was before that firefight, before that bullet struck me down, before I found myself between worlds receiving revelations I never asked for. What I do know is that time is short. December is approaching rapidly, and the events I was shown are coming whether we're ready for them or not. I've done my part by sharing this warning. Now it's up to each person who reads these words to decide what they'll do with the information. Will you dismiss it as the ravings of a traumatized soldier? Will you file it away as interesting, but ultimately ignore the warnings? Or will you take it seriously, prepare your heart, pray for discernment, and stay alert to what God might be doing in these critical months ahead? I can't make that choice for you. All I can do is tell you what I saw, what I heard, what was revealed to me in that place between life and death. I've been completely honest about every detail I can remember. I have nothing to gain from making this up and everything to lose by sharing it. But I'd rather face mockery and criticism than stand before God someday and have to explain why I kept silent about the warnings He gave me to share. The coming December will be significant. Mark these words and remember them. Watch what happens in America with food contamination issues. Pay attention to what unfolds in Canada spiritually. Keep your eyes on South Africa and whatever that eagle with iron feet represents. And most importantly, keep your eyes on Jesus, because He's the one orchestrating all of this according to His purposes and timeline. I close this account with a prayer, the same prayer I've been praying since I woke up in that hospital. Lord, let your will be done. In America, in Canada, in South Africa, and throughout all nations. Let your purposes prevail over human plans. Let your truth expose deception. Let your spirit move powerfully among those who are hungry for you. Protect your people from the schemes of the enemy. Give us wisdom to navigate the challenging times ahead, and help us to keep our eyes fixed on you alone, through whatever comes. Amen. This is my testimony. This is my warning. This is what I saw. May God help us all to be ready for what's coming. Marcus Chen, U.S. Navy SEAL.